Good morning, and welcome to Thursday's Regulatory Briefing Series, sponsored by Virtual Compliance Management. We are glad that you could join us for this session, preparing for the next compliance year. My name is Cheryl Kelly, and I will be the moderator. We know your time is valuable, so we designed these briefing sessions to cover key regulatory issues in 15 to 20 minutes. At the end of today's session, you will gain insights on the compliance trends for next year and steps to help you prepare for 2016. During the session, all participants' lines will be muted. We will be taking your questions at the end of the session, and we encourage you to interact with our speaker, James DeFrance, by typing in questions in the chat window of Join.me by clicking the middle green circle or bubble. We'd love to have you connect with us and keep the conversation going beyond today's event. So please email us questions in case something comes up that you didn't think of during the session. You will be receiving an email that will contain a recording of today's event so that you can review the material or share with other officers at the bank. Now, I would like to introduce the facilitator for today, James DeFrance. James DeFrance is a consumer and real estate lending compliance specialist and a certified regulatory compliance management and anti-money laundering specialist with more than 30 years of experience in the banking industry. He has served as a senior compliance examiner at the Fed in San Francisco and as an analytical manager at the OTS, as well as a commissioned national bank examiner at the OCC. And now I am pleased to give the floor to James DeFrance.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you all for attending our webinar. I'd like to start off by wishing everyone a happy and safe holiday season. Today, we're doing our webinar, and I just want to remind you that we do it every third Thursday of the month. We have a number of these scheduled for the first quarter of 2016. But if you have a topic you'd like for us to address, we invite you to contact us and let us know. Today we're talking about planning the compliance year, which is the financial institution version of New Year's resolutions. So with each new year, there are plenty of new regulations that will be implemented, and you've probably heard about the big ones. Of course, TRID has already started. Flood insurance promises to be very interesting at the beginning of 2016. HMDA changes really won't start to take effect until 2017, but there is some preparation that you need to do in 2016. And of course, BSA is always going to be a focus. A note on BSA, it's likely to get renewed focus based on those terrorist attacks in both France and in Southern California. I say that because the financing for those attacks had to come from somewhere, and it's likely that high-risk customers are going to get renewed focus in the area of BSA. Also remember this, that in addition to regulations, there are additional focuses of the regulators. So the regulators' focus sometimes is driven by politics, sometimes it's driven by experience, and also by resources at the regulatory agencies. So remember, not just new regulations, but also focuses. We think that this new year brings a number of new opportunities. Some are really good, some are not so good. So there's opportunities for new findings, of course, but there's also opportunities for a much stronger year. And we believe that planning can help the good outweigh the bad. We say that changes in regulations create an opportunity because I think that not all regulations that change are bad. For example, TRID has been in existence since October of this year, and the world hasn't exploded. I actually think that you're going to find that TRID will make mortgages easier and better in the long run. Maybe I'm the only one that thinks that, but I do. I think TRID is going to make mortgage lending better. Remember this, though. Changes in regulations are like the new year. It's an opportunity to take a look at things and take stock. Remember that the compliance examination itself is really a test of the effectiveness of your compliance management program, or CMP. So when we talk about the CMP, and many of you who are in compliance probably know already the next four things I'm going to say, the pillars of the CMP, which include your policies and procedures, your internal controls, your independent reviews, and training. Examiners, and as Cheryl pointed out, I'm a former reformed examiner, but we were trained to always look at the overall CMP. So that's the real point of the compliance examination, and they're really looking at these four things and how effective they are at reducing risk of violations at your institution. We have a 6-step plan we believe will help you plan for the compliance year. Step one, it's a really good idea to take a look at what you're up against for the year. The good news here is that regulators really do telegraph what they have in mind. They publish rules that they propose, as well as the final rules, and then they also publish annual statements. The annual statements are statements of intent, and here are the sites for the three big regulators' annual statements. Take a look at these, and in these, they will tell you exactly what it is they're planning to do for the year, what their areas of focus will be, and what their resources will allow them to do. Keep in mind that events such as terrorist attacks or political wins change things, but at least these annual statements and published rules will tell you where it is you should start in planning for the year. Step two, this is both a plea and a plug for risk assessments. They really can be useful and effective, and they don't have to just be something that the regulators make you do. We think that risk assessments are an opportunity to review the overall effectiveness of your compliance management program. We think a basic risk assessment should include the following. Of course, the areas where there have been past findings, the types of products that your institution offers and the risk associated with those products. Here, when I say new products that are being contemplated, I'm talking about new offerings as well as offerings you might plan to take away. Believe it or not, canceling a particular program or product can result in some regulatory concerns. So it's an area that you have to risk assess also. Of course, the reports that you're currently using, are they effective? Are they telling you everything you need to know about risk at your bank? As we've mentioned, considering the changes in regulations that will impact your institution, and changes in staff, promotions, retirements, anything that's planned. We believe you can use these, the risk assessment to set the tone for the resources you'll need, your audit scopes, your training, the software that you may need to purchase for the year, and helping with collaboration from other departments at your institution. I'll talk a little bit more about each of these. Step three, checking twice. Sort of made a list and now checking it twice. It's a really good idea to make sure that you don't have one of those situations where someone is saying, you take it, I got it. So you want to make sure that all your basics are up to date. By that, I mean policies and procedures, of course. There we are. Make sure that they match your risk assessment. And remember this, there's policies, there's procedures, and then there's what people are actually doing. So you want to make sure that people understand what the policies are there to, policies and procedures are there and designed to do, so that you can make sure that nobody's gone rogue, misunderstanding a particular regulation. It's also a good idea to make sure that forms are up to date. Every now and then we come across situations where a branch or two is using an old form because it's the one they're used to, and it's not up to date, and it causes findings and violations. So always making sure that everybody's on the same page is an important step in planning for the year. Use a risk assessment to help figure out what we needed for the year. You don't have to have the same audits every year, for example. You really can change the scope based on need. For example, if you've had flood violations in the past, while nothing's happened in operations, it's okay to reduce the operations scope. We're seeing an area now where regulators are focusing on scope, and this is particularly true in BSA. We've seen a number of banks get criticized because the scope wasn't necessarily comprehensive enough. For example, it didn't necessarily take a look at the effectiveness of the BSA officer, or it didn't look at model and data validation. So just beware that the scope is going to be an area of focus going forward. Compliance committees are a really good opportunity to make sure that senior management gets involved in compliance. And the more you can get everyone involved in the idea of compliance, the more effective your CMP can be. Make sure that your training helps people understand the wherefores and whys of the regulation. A lot of people use internet training, and I understand it's an effective and efficient means of training, but it's also a good idea to take the time to make sure that staff understands the background of the regulation, what it's trying to do, why it's in place, because we found that the more people understand that, the more effective they are with compliance. Step 5 then is to execute the plan. So again, use your risk assessment to help you with the scope of audits. For areas that have been solid, it's okay to de-emphasize while concentrating on the high-risk areas. Again, I pointed out that the audit scopes really have become a focus of the regulators, so beware of that. Your scope, the risk assessments can help drive the order and comprehensiveness of your audits. Remember this, it's not really the external auditor's fault. They're not the ones that really know the nooks and crannies of your institution. You are. So as you use your risk assessment, you can use that to help guide your auditors to the highest areas of risk. Most important of all of these is to remain flexible. One good Senate hearing can change our whole compliance world, as you know. The other thing is this, is that one good finding can get a lot of attention. A quick story about when I was a baby regulator. One regulator found at a bank that they had not calculated the loans to deposit ratio properly on their CRA public file. There's some obscure regulation that requires that you use the UBPR to calculate the loans to deposit ratio. Well, that violation got a bunch of attention, and soon it became the focus of every examination. So just know that regulators from time to time find a particular violation that they like, and that becomes sort of the focus of the regulators. And you have to be flexible as these sort of things happen. Changes in plans, of course, just when you've got your whole thing together, you've got all your resources, you've got your audits planned, you find out from your president that we're now going to offer a credit card. So things do change, and you have to be flexible. So now with credit cards, you have to do a whole new risk assessment. Your whole plan is out of whack. But As long as you're flexible, you should still be in good shape. Remember that a test in an area where you thought you were solid might result in problems. So there's always that an audit or a quality control check can reveal an area that you thought was okay in the past is a problem. So you have to remain flexible. Just want to point out to you that there are many free sources of information about the new regulations. All the regulatory agencies are really good at publishing that. So there's a lot of free information out there. You don't have to pay for it. Regulators will tell you exactly what it is that are areas of emphasis. Risk assessments are definitely an excellent planning tool. And remember, the strong CMPs are the ones with the resources properly allocated. A quick advertisement for you. We do have a product we're very proud of called BCM Connect. It's a resource for compliance people. It gives you an opportunity to look at the new regulations and how they might impact your bank. There's a forms library and much, much more. If you're interested in that, please contact us at our website. With that, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Our first question is it possible to have a strong CMP even if you have findings or violations?
Absolutely. The findings and the violations, there's different types of findings. Some findings are just because a person had a particular bad day. Those findings are not necessarily ones that you should worry about. It's findings that are systemic, where people just didn't understand the regulation or just simply didn't have all the information they need that get regulators upset. Those are the ones that become scary. So you can still have a strong CMP and somebody just had a bad day. Not a concern.
And the next question is, why are final exam reports so different from the findings in the exit meeting?
Yeah, a lot of people tell us about that, how in the exit meetings, several things were discussed, and when they get the final exam report, it doesn't look anything close to what the examiner said at the exit meeting. That's because it goes through a process. There's a whole process that goes through. There are a number of people at the office take a look at the report and try to decide what is and isn't important. So it's really important at the end of an examination that you understand exactly what the findings are, what they mean, and as you start to develop your response, it's a good idea to even contact the office and ask, did we understand this right? Did we get this right? Is this really going to be in the report? So there's a whole process that goes through that makes that happen.
Okay, and the next question is, how much input should the bank have into the scope of the audit?
Tremendous input. That's an area, again, that really is getting scrutinized. The bank really has to drive the scope. The external audit firms, and I've worked for a couple of them, they really have a set scope, but that scope is very generic. So it's really up to the bank to say, well, wait a minute, we want more here, less there. These are the areas where we really need to take a look. And in 2016 and beyond, you're going to see regulators really, really push that idea.
Okay, and our last question. How is it possible that we get a really good exam one year and then a terrible review the next when nothing has changed?
That happens a lot. And there, it really is, unfortunately, something of the luck of the draw. Examiners are human beings too, and each one of them have different areas where they feel the strongest. And so that's where they're going to focus the most of their time and attention. So if you get a different examination crew with different people, they're going to look at the same sort of information differently because of their experience, training, and so forth. So it is possible, just because you've gotten a satisfactory 3 years running doesn't mean you'll do so in the fourth year. And again, that's unfortunately the luck of the draw.
Well, those are all the questions we have today, and thanks for joining us. And on behalf of James DeFrance and the team at Virtual Compliance Management, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.